Hello, this is Dan Alford with the ARC Specialties Roboticist Chronicles podcast. This is another in our series on Dan's business secrets. You can't build robots at home. It requires large buildings and facilities. There's three components to our industry. We have to have the people, we have to have the machinery, and we have to have the facilities. Over the years, we've acquired over 100,000 square feet of manufacturing and engineering space both in here and Ohio. And in the process, I've developed a good relationship with my real estate agent. His name is Barrett Gibson, and Barrett has agreed to come on the podcast with us today and share with us some of the things that he and I have learned over all these years. I think you're going to enjoy it. Hello, this is Dan Alford with the ARC Specialties Roboticist Chronicles podcast. Got an interesting guest for you today. Barrett Gibson has been my real estate guy for many, many years, and he's agreed to come on the show. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start out with a little bit of history of you. Then we'll talk about us. So,
Katie boy, went to Texas Tech, got a finance degree. Came back, didn't have the best grades at Tech, but
it happens.
From Tech, just graduated from Tech as a.
Got the degree.
Yeah, got the degree. Came back, got a job with the Woodlands Development Company, which was owned by Village Builders, which then was quickly bought by Lennar. I was doing residential development and building homes and lot development for them. And
I thought that was all George Mitchell up there.
George Mitchell owned it, and then Exxon bought it. Or
okay,
I can't remember. I was a young kid. I don't remember all the ownership transition. But Lennar, Exxon owned it to kind of develop their excess land, from what I was told that they had, and then they sold it to Lennar, and Lennar, it was almost a loss leader for Exxon, from what I understand. And then they sold to Lennar, who was actually in the business of building homes and making money. And the game changed when I was a year into it. So,
what year was this?
This was 2001, 2002.
Okay.
2001. Making the standard 45, 50 grand.
Living the dream.
Yeah. Living the dream. My boss came to me and was very excited to give me a $1,200 bonus, which equated to, I don't know, $400 to me a paycheck. And I was like, I'm never going to get where I want to get doing this. And I was fortunate enough to, my godfather was in the commercial real estate business, and I basically knocked on his door and said, I want to do what you're doing. I want to get into commercial real estate. And he was gracious enough to lend me his name and his Rolodex, and I just started knocking on doors and landed at a brokerage job at a firm called NAI.
That's when we met.
No, we met a little bit later. Was there for about 7 years and got the itch to start my own firm. I started a firm called Gibson Granello. We were very successful, or we were successful, and then we merged and took over Cressa, which was a good deal for us. And then I had a pretty decent business divorce, and became a partner over at Colliers-International, where I am today. You and I met when I was at Gibson Granello.
Right. What happened to Granello?
He's still in the business. He's still at Cressa. We don't talk anymore. But he's still in business, and living life.
Life goes on.
Life goes on.
All right, so we met, which building? What was the first building we did? Was it this one?
It wasn't, no. My partner at the time, my deal partner, a young man named Jason English,
right.
had set a meeting with you. And I came out, and we were talking, and you were jam-packed in that building, right. And we needed to expand. So we helped you with the expansion of that building. And that was back in the fracking boom, and you were blowing and going, and this building came available, and you and I went after this building. That was an interesting
Right, that's somewhere around 08, 09. Life wasn't good.
Yeah.
There,
It wasn't good. It wasn't good for the rest of the country, but it wasn't bad for Houston.
Well, there's some scary things going on here too. And the backstory is for us to build onto the main building, the city insisted that we not only build onto the building, but add more parking and add a retention pond. And we only had room for 2 of those 3.
Yep.
And that wasn't going to work. So this building came on the market, and it was just a normal real estate deal initially.
Started out that way.
Started out that way. I think we put an offer on it, and then something cratered halfway through
The entity that owned it went BK, and then it went to auction.
And so we went to the auction, and so an
Which
agent.
was actually my first auction. It was very.
So was mine.
And we went thinking we were going to compete tooth and nail, and we get there, and there's probably 100 people there, and 99 of them wanted to go after residential real estate.
Right, this is just one of a bunch of properties there.
Yeah, this building was one of a bunch of properties. I think this was the only commercial building in that auction, and the rest of them were all residential. And I specifically remember we're going to steal this property because there's no one here that's paying attention. They're all buying.
That wasn't the case. There was at least 2 other guys there.
I made the mistake of wearing a jacket and slacks, and I had you and I had Jerry, and we all looked reasonably professional, which was a mistake. And we sat together and we had files and.
Yeah, we looked like we knew what we're doing.
Yeah, I was like, we should have spread out. Now that I've done it, I would do it totally.
Oh, we still made a good deal on it.
Yeah, we made a great deal.
That was a fascinating day because, the most I've ever bought at an auction was like a prize pig or something. So, that, a few more dollars going through the.
But I think there was one gentleman in particular that started bidding against us just because he knew we knew what we were doing. He didn't know anything about commercial real estate. He just knew that there's some value there, some intrinsic value that we were going after, and he ran it up on us a little. But then remember what happened is we got it at such a good number at the auction. The BK lawyers didn't let us buy it at that number.
That's a bankruptcy lawyer.
Yeah.
Right. We thought we had a deal, and then the next thing we know,
they're like, "Oh no, we're taking this off." And then the broker called me direct, and we had to work another deal.
There's one funny story from that auction though. My buddy Jerry, he's a mentor to me, and at the beginning of the auction, Jerry wrote something on the bottom of his coffee cup. He had a styrofoam coffee cup, and then he was kind of coaching me through that thing. He would elbow me and say, "Bump it a bunch," And when I bumped it a bunch one time, one of the other competitors dropped out. Yeah. So Jerry knew what he was doing. And then the gavel comes down, sold, we got it. Jerry shows me what's written on the bottom of his cup. It was within 10%
of the number.
Yeah. So it's good. The bottom line, it's good to have mentors, and it's good to have a real estate agent that was willing to go with me because what's the profit at an auction? It's a tiny fraction of your normal.
Yeah. No, it wasn't nearly a market fee, but most real estate brokers aren't in it for a one deal. I'm in it for a long term. Hence, that was 10 years ago, and you and I are still.
Yeah, we're still doing jobs.
Now I think we're friends beyond clients too. Mm-hmm. You're a client of mine, but I also consider you a friend. So these are the relationships I'm after. That I try to grow is not just one deal and done. Because I did that, it showed you I was willing to go the extra mile, and now.
Here we go. We had to buy this building 3 times.
Yeah.
But now we own it, and then this is the new studio. We call it the Houston Advanced Technology Studio, and it's specifically for podcasts like this. So we're making use of one of the rooms this way.
You're making use of it. ARC's using it, and lo and behold, your value has gone.
It was a good deal.
Yeah, your value's gone up in the years you've owned it.
All right. I think we're kind of a special case because we're owner occupied. Mm-hmm. And so you deal with people like me, mm-hmm. and you also sold me a building that we thought we were going to need in a few years, but then we've leased out. So I guess in that case, it's more of an investment for me. You deal with both kinds of clients. So
right.
Talk about the differences.
So owner occupied is essentially a group, a person, individual, or company that has a need for their operation. to operate in a building. We go buy a vacant building, they put their operation in that building. An investor is someone who buys that building, either buys a building that's already leased that has a cash flow attached to that, or takes a little bit more risk and buys a vacant building and does some value add components to it and goes and takes the risk and put it out on the market to get it leased. The beautiful thing you have is, you've got the golden goose where the right hand's paying the left hand. Dan Alford Family Trust can go buy the building, and ARC can lease the building back from the family.
And then if times are rough, we can just not pay the landlord.
Exactly. So there's definitely some flexibility there, and it creates another revenue stream for you and your family. And hopefully down the road, when opportunities come, you and I can take some cash flow and go buy some other deals.
Yeah, you always want to buy buildings.
Oh yeah, I'm always that.
Okay, you use two phrases all the time, and you've explained them to me, but explain them to the audience. The cash on cash and cap rate. Those seem to be your quick ways to quantify the value of a real estate deal.
Right. Basically, there's ratios that help real estate investors evaluate their returns. Cap rate, capitalization rate, is essentially your net operating income divided by the total project cost. So, for example,
project cost including the loan?
No, total project cost. So, let's just say, for example, we buy this building for $900,000. You spend another $100,000 in due diligence costs, i.e., attorney fees, survey, environmental,
real estate broker,
whatever, roof inspections, all that stuff. And
so we're a million in.
So your total cost is $1 million.
So we're not talking about how it's financed, whether that was
we're not
cash.
talking about financing.
Okay, $1 million building.
$1 million building, and you get $100,000 in net operating income from that $1 million building.
10%. What do you look for?
That is a 10 cap.
Yeah. So what can you achieve in Houston on that cap?
Right now, cap rates, historically, from a Houston perspective, are very compressed. Now, it's actually interesting timing that you bring that up, because with interest rates, cap rates and interest rates are
tied together.
The recent moves up in interest rates, cap rates are having an upward pressure. So the world is, when you and I bought this deal, I personally invest, and my criteria back then when you and I bought this deal was probably I always wanted to do a minimum of a 12 cap. I can't do that in this market anymore. Cap rates have been compressed. The world is a smaller place, and what I mean by that is, in the 80s, the internet wasn't around. Dan Alford didn't know what was going on in Seattle, and the guys in Seattle didn't know what was going on in Houston.
So it's made it more competitive.
Yes, very much so.
Keeps you honest. That's good.
Yeah, it's the world is definitely more competitive. It moves at a much faster pace. Internet, California investors, their valuations have gone through the roof, but they're only getting 3-4% rate returns. So they think a 7-8% rate return over here is.
So is that what you look for now?
I've had to lower my criteria in order to get deals done. For example, my brother and I are looking at a deal right now that is a 9 cap.
Okay. I'm just looking for a ballpark number here.
Yeah. So every deal is a case by case. So this 9 cap is a small, local to regional credit type tenant versus maybe a 5 cap that is a institutional grade dock high distribution building with Amazon on the hook for 10 years. And that's those are chain sub 5s. Mm-hmm. So there's several different variables that go into the formula.
On top of that, you're not even mentioning that the values of property in Houston's going up. Tell me a number. Per year.
It has gone up, but
5-10%.
Mm-hmm.
So you're making money on the property. It's gaining value, and you're making more off of this investment than you ever could possibly at a bank.
Yep.
So what's the downside? Why isn't everybody doing this?
great question. Fear. Everyone likes to talk big. I've realized in my life that everyone likes to talk, and then when you get to the edge of jumping off and taking that leap of faith, 95% of the people back off.
Well, when we bought this building, it was scary times.
Yeah.
You claim it was good times, but it was not. It was scary times. We didn't know what was going down. I was about to sign a big note. I signed it, and the same thing on our other two buildings you helped me with on 529. Right when we signed that was the end of 2015. For the listeners that weren't watching, the price of oil had dropped from 130 down to 50.
Yeah, I remember you had aspirations of taking both those buildings, and oil did what oil did, and you said, Barrett, I don't need one of these. I need you to go lease it out, and I think I had it leased out. And
no, we were going to lease it from the beginning,
Yeah.
but it was going to be a short-term lease. It turned into a long-term, but it worked out great.
Yeah.
It worked out great. I have no regrets. So, and then so what do you think the state of Houston real estate is now? You're obviously in the game, but you're telling me that the cap rates are lower now.
Cap rates, they're tied to interest rates. So we've been living on cheap money for the past, 12, 15 years. I can't remember how long. I need a history of the interest rates. But now as interest rates are creeping up, there's going to be a painful transition here between sellers and buyers. And it's happening right now as we speak. In fact, it happened to me last week. I had a deal blow out, and there's several brokers that are having deals blow out because when you underwrite a deal, you're underwriting, and the main component for the buyer is what's their cost of funds, what's their cost of money.
What's the interest rate?
Right. And when that goes from 4.25% to 5.7%, that changes the game. That changes the game dramatically. And what one day worked underwriting one way, the next day doesn't work at 5.7. So these buyers are either retrading the deal or dropping the deal altogether.
Okay, but my guess is, when I was a kid, interest rates were down low. That was in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And then they went up.
Define low. What does that mean?
I think my parents were paying 3 or 4%.
Really?
Back in the early 60s.
Right.
I was just a kid, so I don't really recall. But then it went up outrageous in the early 70s. I think when I bought my first house in 82, it was probably at 14%. Mm-hmm. And so I was shocked when it went back down. So my prediction is it's coming back. We've got inflation coming, and interest rates will travel with that. So if I were on the brink of a deal with you right now, I would be inclined to lock in whatever rate I could get, because I think it's going up. What's your take?
Oh, it's definitely going up.
Right.
And I've just got a conversation with the deal I mentioned earlier. I told the broker representing the group, I said, look, if this deal isn't done by July, I think 23rd is when the Fed, I've been on the phone with multiple bankers. The Fed's raising rates anywhere from 50 basis points to.
They have to.
Yeah, they have to. We're taking our medicine, and it's a necessary process. It's painful, but in order to stave off inflation, you got to do it.
That's how they fixed it in the 70s.
Yep.
Late 70s, early 80s.
And so what happens if the cost of money goes up, values come down. Cap rates go up.
Interesting.
Because you're not getting the same rate. You're not getting the same returns.
Money's going to flow to wherever the best return is.
Yep.
Interesting. So, all right. Triple net lease. Explain that. I'm very familiar with it. Is that only something that happens in commercial stuff? That's not residential?
I'm not familiar with the residential side. I do zero residential, so I couldn't speak to the residential side. But on the commercial side, there's the triple net costs are really, it's your operating expenses. There's 3 components to it. The main component is taxes. That probably makes up anywhere from 80 to 85% of all the total operating expenses. The other 2 components are insurance and common area maintenance.
Right.
So taxes for us in Houston or in Texas, we're in a non-income state
No income tax in Texas.
No income taxes.
We got sales tax, we got property tax.
Right.
So it's 8.25% sales and then pretty heavy property tax, in my opinion.
Very heavy property taxes related to compared to other states. But
Somebody said around
that's how
3.
we generate
Right.
most of our revenue to pay for the public utilities and things and whatnot, and schools and things like, flood control, all that good stuff.
So is triple net the typical way the commercial stuff's done?
Yep.
So I'm winding back to your cap rate. So does that simplify your cap rate calculation? Because
cap rate has everything to do. Cap rate operating expenses has nothing to do with your cap rate calculation. Cap rate is basically you got two components to your lease rate: base rent and your operating expenses, which is your triple net.
But you're stripping out of your operating expenses. If you have a triple net tenant, then you don't pay taxes. The landlord doesn't pay taxes.
But you're not receiving revenue on it.
Right, but it doesn't add. It doesn't add to your costs.
It doesn't add to your costs, but it doesn't add to your return either.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand how you look at these deals.
Yeah, no, I mean if you didn't structure it in triple net and the landlord paid for those operating expenses, your return would go way down. So out of that $100,000, if you're paying, $30,000, if the landlord's having to pay $30,000 of that $100,000 towards taxes, insurance, and maintenance, now your NOI is $70,000, and you're $70,000 on your million, you're at a 7.
7,
or whatever that
it
is.
seems like a big change.
It is.
All right, so for ARC, at least in Houston, the property taxes are huge. That's one of our largest expenses, and my guess is it's probably worse for me than some of the other companies because we have 100,000 square feet and only 60 employees. I don't think that the tax structure is conducive for large factories. Am I missing something? Most people stick 10 times as many people in that same square footage.
Right. I would say the only thing you're missing is you're excluding, or you're putting yourself in one category. Everyone's feeling the pain. The city of Houston, Harris County, they're going after everyone. That's their main revenue source.
Right.
And we all know that they're not the most efficiently run organizations. So they need that revenue in order to, taxes. Once they get to the tax revenue, taxes very rarely go down. You and I both know that.
Yeah.
Once they have that tax revenue, it typically goes up, and so you and I were talking before the show started, fighting taxes. You should, if anything, whoever listens to this podcast, you need to fight taxes every year, no matter what.
Do all your clients fight the taxes every year?
Not everyone, but you need to. You need to. And I tell that to every client. Whether you get the valuation changed or you get it lowered just by a little bit, that's just, it's incremental, but you do it year over year over year, you're saving yourself a tremendous amount of money over a long period of time.
Yeah, plus if my neighbor doesn't, then the comparables make it harder.
It's amazing how many people just accept, they get their, taxes are going up 30% and they just accept it and pay it. It's, you need to fight it every year.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm on the same page.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't like the system, but it is the system, so.
Yeah. I've never lived in a state that has income tax, so it's painful to pay our property taxes. I feel it, but I would imagine it's probably a little bit more painful, because some of these states have income tax, state income tax, and
right.
property taxes.
Well, that's just double inefficiency. So thank goodness we only have one group.
Exactly.
You know what? One thing I think is unfair, and nobody's been able to answer this question, so I don't know if I should expect you to, but there's one asset in Texas that's not taxed: mineral rights. Why is that? That seems so unfair to me. You got an opinion on that? Because when somebody,
I was not aware of that.
Well, no, when somebody sells their land, particularly rural land,
Right.
they have no disincentive not to retain the mineral rights
Right.
because it's not taxed.
Right.
Personally, I think there ought to be some kind of tax on that just to disincentivize people from keeping these mineral rights. But I'm the only one that seems to be worried about it, so maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't own a ranch like you.
No, okay.
But I mean, That was probably a deal struck way back when with Standard Oil, and I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you.
Probably the oil companies want to shoot me for mentioning it.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey,
We're in Houston.
yeah,
so-
never mind. No, scratch that, Johnny. No. The recession's coming, right?
Recession's here.
Okay, so
It's coming.
as a, not as an owner occupied company, because I got to have a place to work, right? So it doesn't count for me, but for the real estate investor, what does the oncoming recession, how does that change your equation? How does that change the way you do business?
Everyone's different. Me personally, I've got a laundry list of clients that I trust and have good relationships with that if I needed cash, I could call and put deals together. So I'm actually getting excited about the opportunities that are coming. I think there's some people that might have gotten over their skis, might have did some financing that's coming up soon, and they're going to have to refi, or paid top dollar. There's going to be some bloodletting, if you will. And so I've been doing this 22 years now, and I've got a laundry list of clients that I can call. You're obviously one of them. That when I see an opportunity, I'm gonna jump on it. And
Well, this building's a perfect example. I don't know, did you ever know Gus Levy, the GSL Investments? Gus was a good friend of mine. He's gone now.
Yep.
I still know his grandson, but
his David Ebrew
he's building a lot of buildings.
is doing very well.
Yeah, good for him. I'm proud of him. But I remember in '08, we were starting to have the recession. And I got anxious. So I called Gus. I said, Gus, you're the only guy I know old enough to have lived through the Great Depression. May I come visit you? I went up to his office. I said, Gus, what are we going to do? I said, there's going to be universal suffering. He said, no, that's not the case, Dan. He says, what you need to do is remain liquid and capitalize on opportunities. And I believe that you and I bought this building for 30 cents on the dollar.
Damn near.
Yeah, so I guess that's what you're saying is there's going to be opportunities.
I always try to go against the grain. When the masses are running and screaming and with their head on fire and they're scared, that's when you go buy.
Yeah.
And when everyone's flipping around, enjoying life and buying, that's when you should sell. That's to your point. I'm very excited. I know that sounds bad, but I'm excited about the opportunity here in the next 12 to 36 months that's coming.
Well, Gus agrees with you, and he lived through the Great Depression. So
Yeah, Gus was, Gus. I remember touring a building with Gus when he had to have been. I don't know how old he was. He was old, but he was out there in the summer heat touring one of his buildings.
Oh, he never quit.
Yeah, he never quit. He was a hell of a real estate guy.
You and I did a deal in Ohio, which I think is interesting because I was buying a company which included 2 buildings and a bunch of equipment, and so my only yardstick was Houston real estate. And so I look up there and go, there's no way we can afford this. Just one of the 2 buildings alone I couldn't afford. And they said, make a bid. And long story short, we got the whole place, included the buildings, the business, the book of work, and all the equipment for the value of a couple of the machines inside this building. I was shocked. And so my point, Barrett, is if you destroy an area's industry, the value of a property goes to nothing.
Yeah, it definitely can. I don't foresee it happening anytime soon. But, and this is my own opinion, as cultures get more advanced and they get wealthier, the manufacturing jobs and not making things, they ship off to lower end countries, i.e. Mexico, China, Vietnam, all that. When that starts happening, and it's been happening for
they've been offshoring for
now,
decades.
And you're purely a service economy, you're
not creating wealth.
You're not creating wealth. You're starting. I think you're on the downside. You're starting to see some of the manufacturing coming back now.
Yes.
Quality control has been an issue.
Robots will fix that.
Still to this day, I use Jerry's example. I don't know if he might be upset if I said this, but Jerry, had his catalog that he had spent years, decades, probably building that catalog and built
Right.
a very successful company on that catalog.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he told me one time he went over to China and they had the exact same catalog, page for page. I mean, that's the kind of stuff Chinese, you know.
Yeah, we innovate, other people duplicate. But
Exactly.
I don't have a problem with that because competition improves the breed. It just forces us to innovate to the next level.
Right.
We're shipping machines to China. It can be done.
Yep.
Can be done. I read an interesting book a while back called The Depression Diaries. It's written by an accountant, CPA, back in the Great Depression. And it's just kind of an interesting narrative going along. But one of the passages that really shook me was talking about real estate, because I've always assumed that the ultimate hedge against inflation is real estate. But in this book, The Depression Diaries, the CPA was saying that his clients were knocking down their own buildings because they couldn't afford the taxes on both the buildings and the land. And so their only alternative was to destroy the building, reduce the value of their property, and retain the land. When I read that, it kind of shook my basic belief that the best investment, well, I still think it's the best investment, but it made me realize everything is fragile.
Yep. Hey, we what's the old saying? History's bound to repeat itself, something to that nature. But I mean, you asked if could we go through a Great Depression again? Yeah, I don't want to. I don't think anyone does, but can it happen? Yeah. Houston's interesting because we've kind of been sheltered from the rest of the country because of energy.
Yep.
When the 80s happened, we were so dependent on energy.
It wasn't good.
And it wasn't good. We've corrected that somewhat, and we're a lot more diverse than we were back in the 80s. We're not solely dependent upon energy. But let's not kid ourselves. Energy is still...
It's a big chunk.
It's still the big part of our...
And it's the best industry to be in my humble opinion.
Yeah. But with this new, green and culture that we are dealing with, is Houston now on the, do we have the shot clock working against us? I don't know. I mean, is electric vehicles going to take the place of gas running vehicles?
Well, let me tell you the reality of it. The challenges we face here in the oil field are tough. I mean, all the oil that's left is so deep that the pressures and temperatures are so high that, conventional technologies push to its limits. And so what we found is if we take the same technology we developed in the oil patch and apply it to electric vehicles, for example, or some of these other more trendy industries, makes us look like we know what we're doing.
Right.
So we've been doing EVs, we've been doing rockets, we're doing a lot of stuff. We're trying to balance the trade deficit. We just shipped something to China, shipping stuff to India. So don't assume that the oil field industry is strictly about petroleum. We're about solving problems that can be applied all over the world, and I'm doing it.
Well, I mean, that's you in particular, and I applaud you for doing that. But I'm talking about Houston. Your question was, will Houston as a whole go through that? And you're smart to diversify yourself into different sectors, but oil still butters our bread.
Well, and I'm not being so pessimistic, and I'm just throwing this out to create an argument. I'm not being so pessimistic that I'm going to not be aggressive in my growth.
Right.
It's interesting, when I bought, you helped me buy this first building, I walked all the way around the block. I was going to talk to all the owners. They ain't there. Not a single owner. And, I was it. I was kind of disappointed. But on the other hand, none of these businesses have grown. And since then, we bought 5 other buildings.
Yep.
And so, I'm going to continue to remain aggressive. So don't get me wrong. I'm not planning for failure. I think if you plan for failure, you're going to miss opportunities.
I agree. No, I guess I don't think we'll see it in our time frame.
So you're not going to worry?
I think you and I will be long gone.
Okay.
But, I think it is happening and it will happen. It's just, I think, and again, I'm not an expert on this, but the amount of energy consumption that we consume and are predicting consume with the growing population, there's no way we can get it done with wind and solar.
No,
it's not possible. I think wind and solar I think represents 3 to 5% of the total energy consumption.
But there's not enough energy return on energy invested.
Right.
I saw today they're coming up with scenarios to deal with $200 oil, and I think it's inevitable. So I'm not scared, and no, I'm not becoming cautious or pessimistic. Just the opposite. But anything.
And then another thing is, everyone talks about oil as in gas or diesel or fuel. Oil is everywhere.
Every calorie of food you eat has 10 calories of fossil fuel making it.
Yeah,
So you're eating oil.
I mean, even these, and when I always laugh, there's an email that goes around in the real estate world. These, the wind turbine. I mean, this is oil product. I mean, the wind turbines, the amount of energy, the amount of natural gas or coal or whatever
Electricity to build it.
they use to build that wind turbine. That wind turbine doesn't pay for itself for 20 years.
Right, it requires subsidies. I enjoy working in industries that don't require subsidies, that can stand on their own.
Right, I think that's crucial.
Yeah. Tell me a story. Give me a real estate story. What was the coolest, best, most memorable deal you did? And then I'm going to ask for the worst failure too. Okay.
Coolest deal.
You got to admit, this building was kind of fun.
This was fun.
Buying it 3 times.
Yeah, no, this was a great deal.
Bought it 3 times, still got it for 30 cents on the dollar. But
Yeah.
You got a better story than that?
One of my deal partners and I had a client who will remain nameless.
Good idea.
Needed to buy some land. Excuse me, back up. Needed to lease some land. They needed to test some equipment, and they didn't want to own the land. They didn't want to commit money. I said, well, would you mind if I bought it and leased it back? He goes, no. You're just as good as anyone else. Actually, you're better because we've got a relationship with you. I was like, fine, let's do it.
You get somebody to pay for the land, you get to own it.
Yep.
What could go wrong?
So my partner, or one of my deal partners, and I went and bought the land. It was such a small deal, but we were young brokers at the time. And
Big deal to you.
A big deal to us. The bank we went through, who was also a buddy of ours, gave us a loan, but it wasn't a traditional loan. He gave us 100% of the money needed. All we had to do was escrow a certain amount of money into the account. Since we had this reputable company on a lease, we took the lease to the bank. He said, "Yeah, it's a small deal, no big deal. Here's the money."
Where is this going?
Yeah. So, do the deal, and that money that we escrowed was supposed to be for the tenant to draw down on for improvements, to do electrical, do fencing, do stabilization, do the culverts and all that good stuff. Well, year after year, the tenant went out there and did it, and big corporation, they never drew down on it. We asked them, are y'all ever going to draw down on it? We'll draw down on it when we want to. It was like, okay. So it sat there.
What's wrong with this?
Nothing's wrong with it. You asked me what my greatest deal
Oh, this is a good deal. Okay.
Yeah, this is a good deal. So 5 years goes, we did a 5-year lease. They renew for another 5 years, and they never draw down. And meantime, we told the banker, hey, we pretty much don't owe any, I think we got to year 7, we didn't owe anything. And we said, can we take that 50 grand back? And they're like, yeah, we don't owe anything to us. It's your 50 grand. So we took the 50 grand back. So I own 8 acres out there, and I didn't put any money into it. I shelved some money for some time, but so my return is infinite.
And they didn't. Yeah, that's a pretty good deal.
So
it's a cap rate of infinite.
Yeah, no, it was. I don't know that we'll ever replicate that again. But I mean, it was a small deal. But we still own it to this day, and they're still paying rent.
And there's no environmental issues?
No. We've owned it for 17 years now, and my value, we've probably quadrupled in value, and I keep paying rent, and it's a beautiful deal.
Okay, give me a bad one.
Bad one.
Is it an environmental one or?
No.
I'd like you to talk about environmental phase ones too.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that, but this one drives me insane because.
Is it still going on?
No, coming here, I drove by it, and that's what sucks about it. It says I drive by it all the time, and it just grinds at me every time I drive by it because it's right by my house. So one of my other partners and I decided to get into self-storage, do a self-storage deal. He was an appraiser, and he knew self-storage, and he focused on self-storage, and he knew it up and down, knew the values, knew the rents, knew the comps. And he was like, hey, and he wasn't a broker, he was an appraiser. But, we office next to each other, and he goes, hey, I need your help. You're a broker, this land tract would be perfect. So, okay, well, that's what I do. I'll call the landowner, and I'll start talking to him. It was a home run deal. I would retire. I wouldn't be here if we got the deal done. I'd be done. I'd be gone. And we got the land under contract. My money behind it, which I needed around $7 million, was heavily involved in oil and gas. And this was probably around 14. And he actually, day after I went hard on the contract on the land, he called me and says, Barrett, I'm sorry, I got to pull out.
Ouch.
Mm-hmm. And every day, my competitor who had the same idea picked up the contract and built exactly what we were going to build, and has killed it. And it's right there on I-10, and it's right there between Memorial City and City Center. Self-storage deal.
And I've heard that's like a placeholder. You put a self-storage on a piece of land as a placeholder to pay the bills, and then ultimately you build condos or something.
Now, self-storage gets some pretty good returns.
Yeah.
At least they did back when we were looking at this deal. Their return per square foot was pretty damn good.
All you lost was a little bit of earnest money, though.
I recaptured the earnest money.
Okay, so you didn't lose nothing.
I didn't lose any money.
You just didn't get rich.
Right.
Well,
but that
happens. Okay.
But that. I have to drive by that deal. I see that deal every day.
That's probably good for you.
No, it drives me insane. I see it every day going to work, and every day coming home, and it's nuts.
That reminds me of one of my early mentors. He said, "You always got to pay yourself." When I started the company, you always got to pay. I said, "Whoa, sometimes I don't have any money." He says, "Always pay yourself." He says, "And then put your paychecks on the dresser. So you got to walk by them every morning until you figure out a way to."
Pay.
So that's probably good for you to drive by this and.
Keeps me motivated, that's for sure.
All right, so what do you have for advice right now? Maybe you kind of covered this for investors and owner-occupiers in the current market with the future. So I guess you're thinking these are good times.
When you say that, I always take the view of everything's case by case.
Okay.
You could have bought a building 2 years ago and had ultimate cheap money and be in a great situation and have 10-year money and be 8 years left on your loan, and you're fine. If you're coming up for refinance right now and you're struggling, and that's going to be a totally different story. So everyone's case by case. Even when I talk to clients or new prospects, you can take two buildings, like, well, what can we do? I can give general idea what we can do, but one building, the same exact building, could be right next to each other, and this guy could be worth $100 million, and this guy could be in debt $50 million. Mm-hmm. Well, I can guarantee we're going to do a much better deal on this guy than we are this guy, but it's the same building, same market, same geographical area. It's just, that's what I mean by case. So you don't know until you get into the asset itself of where you're going to end up.
I guess we're a perfect case. This building we got for cheap, and then the next building you sold me was 3.5 times as expensive. But the reality is, both of the deals worked. Mm-hmm. So, if you're going to try to time everything, you're going to run out of time.
Jason and I were actually worried about that. We hit a grand slam here.
You thought you'd ruin me.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, he's going to expect that every time now. And did we do a bad job of setting expectations?
No, both of them are good deals. Both of them, no regrets. So, you can't time the market.
No.
You don't have enough years in your life.
Mm-mm. Deals, even if interest rates go up, deals are going to get done.
Right.
And there's still going to be good quality deals done. It's just different parameters.
Will you be selling more owner-occupied, doing more owner-occupied? Because us owner-occupier kind of guys, we got to have a place to work. So, are there more of us during hard times, or okay?
I would think, yeah. I mean, I don't know, because that's a great question, because I I've not gone.
You've not noticed a trend?
I haven't gone. I started this business in 2002, 2003-ish. I really haven't gone through that many bad times. When I started, it was the internet bust, which I was starting out, and I didn't know any better. I wouldn't make any money. You really don't make any money for the first 2-3 years of your career anyway. So I didn't.
I think you're a chronic optimist because there's been some rough times between then and now.
Well,
so.
maybe I don't know. For me personally, I haven't had that.
Oh, quit bragging.
I know. I mean, okay, so take the financial crisis. What brought us out. 2007 to 9. Houston was last in, first out. My revenue really didn't change. It might have gone down a little, but it didn't change a little. It didn't change that much.
Oh yeah, but the guy in this building went bankrupt and left.
Because fracking. Fracking started, and I'm an industrial real estate broker, and oil field service companies were expanding left and right. So I was doing just fine.
Okay, so you're just, as long as there's business going on in a city, you'll be okay.
Yeah, where brokers start getting in trouble is when it gets stagnant
across the.
Yeah, when it just
across the economy.
Yeah, I mean we make money on the highs and we make money on the lows.
Yeah, you like the cycles. We're kind of the same. The only thing I worry about is a global recession. But as long as somebody's working, guess what? We're going to build robots for that segment of the industry. So yep. I think you and I are in the same boat in that regard.
Well, that's why I've always told you, and I think I've asked you a couple times if I could put money into your company, because robotics. I mean, I'm a big believer in the human race is all about efficiency.
Yeah.
Are we going to get so efficient that we're all out of a job? I don't know.
I don't think so.
But I mean, robotics is.
It's just a labor savings device. Yeah. Unless you want to wash your own clothes by hand, you need to embrace labor saving devices, yep. and a robot is one of those.
Yep. And a robot doesn't get sick on Monday and Friday.
Yep.
Robot
never got
robot
COVID.
Doesn't strike. Robot, mm-hmm. It's the way of the future.
Every time they raise the minimum wage, we sell more robots. Why
yep.
is that?
Yep. I mean, Amazon, I don't know if you've ever seen a YouTube clip or anything of one of their warehouses, but
they're empty.
There are robots everywhere,
people, right?
Picking up, orders, taking it to conveyor belts. I mean, it's amazing.
But it's not a job you wanted anyway. All right, it's obvious we could go on for a while, but why don't we cut this one off and just get you to come back again later? What do you say?
That sounds good. I appreciate it.
All right, so how do people get a hold of you? If go ahead, pitch yourself, pitch your company.
I'm at Colliers-International. My number is 713-830-2114, or my email is barrett.gibson@colliers.com.
And so this is no residential, strictly industrial, commercial. You call it commercial.
Yeah, commercial.
Any specialization within that? Do you do offices, factories?
I do majority. Majority meaning 95% industrial.
I see.
I do 5% office. When clients, that I have good relationships with, demand that I'm work on their deal.
Well, I think you're in the right place at the right time. One of my buddies is a very successful engineer out of Germany. He came up with a clever invention. It's a long story, but guess where he invests his money? Houston real estate,
yeah.
all the way from Germany.
I've talked to that.
Oh, that's right. I introduced you guys.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I haven't talked to him in years, but he's done well.
I just thought that was kind of a vote of confidence for our local economy.
I have a big right place, right time. Being in Houston, Texas, in this triangle of Houston, Dallas, Austin, I think this is going to be one of the biggest employment power centers, if not already, in the country, therefore in the world.
You're seeing companies flow right into Texas. Yeah. Nothing's going to change.
No, I mean, it's nuts.
All right, well, so if somebody needs to move to Texas, give you a call.
Please.
Thank you so much for coming on our program today, and we really will get you back. Why don't we go about a year, see what this recession does, and then we'll regroup.
That'd be actually pretty good.
Yeah, let's come back then. Thank you so much for being on.
Appreciate it, Bob.